Hey, Simon, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hi Brian, thanks for having me on. It's a real honor. I've been following your videos for some time now, so it's really cool to be on. So yeah, basically, I'm a Welsh guy from a small town in North Wales. Moved to Sweden 11 years ago, and fell into sales. Can one say? You'll have to excuse me with my English, even though I'm a native speaker. I sometimes stumble with words because I think in Swedish a lot these days. So I sometimes have to say the Swedish word out loud to remember the English word.
Yeah. Have you started dreaming in Swedish? I think that's the turning point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a mixed bag. So some days you're thinking in the other language, but you're having to speak English, and then the other days you're thinking in English and having to speak Swedish. So it's a day by day thing. It varies.
And what motivated you to get into sales? Was there nothing else going on? The rugby didn't work out, or
What in Swedish we call it a banana skal, which means a banana skin. So it was just by pure chance that I led into sales. So I was an electrician. My background was an electrician, project management. So it was all to do with technical and installation. And I moved to Sweden 11 years ago. And that was literally because I saw myself. I was 25 years old and I was working in this job as an electrician doing big projects in hospitals and data centers and things like that. And I just saw my career before my eyes. It was like, I'm going to be doing this till I'm 60 years old. And I don't want to be doing this till I'm 60 years old. So I said to my wife is Swedish. I said, we need to move. We need to go somewhere else. And yeah, and I was pushing for warmer climes and different. I had a few different suggestions, but in the end we ended up with Stockholm, Sweden. And I was unemployed for almost a year when we first
wow.
moved here, and I started working at 17. So it was it was real tough. The first year I was thinking I was heading to kindergarten to drop my youngest daughter off, and it was like, what have I done? Minus 32 degrees. And I was like, what have I done? But anyway, I got a job working with automation. So I was basically programming home cinemas and small Wi-Fi networks in people's houses. And I did that for a couple of years. It was cool to get an idea of something else, bit of IT experience. And then I applied for a job as a head technician at a company called Eaton, big American company, and they work with basically UPS IT infrastructure. So I had this interview with a guy called Roger Quist, and he was the MD at the time, and he was like, "I think you'd be good at sales." I was like, "Sales," and for me back then, sales was like a dirty word. I was the blue collar. They always that other side of the fence sort of thing, and so I was like, "Does it pay more money?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, why didn't you say so?" Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Should have led with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where it started. And I was working as channel sales. So I was working with partners, and yeah, it went really well. It was a bit of a luck of the Welsh. Felt like I had a bit of a Midas touch. Everything I touched turned to gold. And it was a great 3 years. And then, unfortunately, my closest manager, he got really sick, Tony Wickstrom, and unfortunately, he passed away. And then I moved into his role temporary for a while, looking after the Nordics. And then when we actually got somebody to fill that role, I was, eager to take a step up. So I started working with service sales, and obviously that was something that was a drastic change from what I was working with, because with the channel sales, it was a hybrid. It was retention and acquisition. But then going into service, it was purely working with the customers that I had.
Yeah.
So it was a whole new skill set I had to develop and find ways to make cash, more cash on the customers we already had. So yeah, that was good. And then I got poached by competition, Vertiv, and that was good. But it wasn't really what I was looking for. And then I took a real leap of faith, and I took a job for a German company. And I was starting the company in Sweden for them, for something that I had never worked with, no experience. So it was a real risk. And it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. It was IT consulting, and it was
Oh, that's
basically
hard.
trying to, yeah, and it was trying to sell consultancy of people's time who were working in other countries. And probably now it would be very different with the COVID and, you know, how things have developed. But it turned out that Sweden was very different to the markets that they were used to and that they'd expanded into. So I was working 12 hours days trying to make this work. And in the end, I actually burnt out. I went into the wall, and I was really ill. And luckily I found the job that I have now, and it's been absolutely magic. It's a great
Cool.
job.
Now, you're certainly the first electrician I've had on this show. Now, because I guess what motivates you go into become an electrician, very structured, process oriented, very precise. Bad things happen if you don't do it right.
It is funny, really, because I wanted to be a musician.
Oh,
And the only reason why I went into that line of work was because my grandfather owned an electrical company. My eldest brother was an electrician. And it felt like, yeah, if
natural.
I at least do this, my mum will get off my back and she'll be okay with me. You know, I've got a profession. But it was nothing I ever
It
wanted to
wasn't
do,
your,
really.
it was
No.
against the grain. Well, I heard money motivated. What else do you like about sales? Is it the variety as opposed to knowing what you're doing every day? And
It's the game. I like the game.
yeah,
I mean, sales, I wouldn't say I love sales. I wouldn't say that, but I love the game. And the higher up you come within sales, the higher stakes the game becomes. So, you know, when you're sitting there with big deals and you're talking to more and more senior people, I love the psychology of it, and I love the game. And that's why I've done well, I think, because of that. I don't I don't I still have a sort of perception where I don't really see myself as a salesperson. And I think that's because of the first 7 years of my career I wasn't, and now I've done 9 years in sales. So I should really regard myself as a salesperson, but I still see myself as, you know, more of a technical advisor, if you like. And I think that's something that I can find and resonate with customers, because obviously when you have a customer call, you've got somebody from the business, you've got somebody who's got a technical need, you've got somebody from procurement who's keeping an eye on the budget, and you've got to play all of these cards, and you've got to make sure, okay, who do I need to build the allegiance with to make this go as far as I can?
yeah.
Um,
And
so yeah.
well, let's go with that metaphor, the game, because it is a game, right? All the game is trying to confine life into something that's manageable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what about it do you like? Is it the winning? Is it playing it well? Is it beating your competition?
I think it's the pursuit. It's the
Yeah.
actual what's going on under the time, because I'm really rubbish at dealing with success. So when I actually, you know, hit a goal or something gets done, I'm like, oh, what do I do now? You know,
The
I've got
next
to do
one,
it all
right?
again. But
Yeah.
it's the pursuit. It's under the time where it's so, oh, are they going to say yes? Are they going to say no? You know, how can I influence it so it goes in the right direction? So it's definitely the chase that I love. Um, and I love how something that you've said previously, and it really resonates with me, is no deal's the same. And that's why we haven't been replaced by AI yet, because
Well, well, AI can take an order,
yeah, yeah,
right? But AI is not going to sell a B2B solution. And
no, exactly. And every opportunity that comes to the door is different. So it's a different solution, and it's a different group of people that you're speaking to. So, you know, there's so many intricacies that you have to take account for, that I think that's what I enjoy, that no meeting is ever the same, even though it's a similar product or a similar solution that they're looking for. The actual getting over to the goal line is a completely different journey.
And what makes you good at it?
Don't take myself too seriously. Yeah. I think there's a fine line between being fearless and arrogant, and you've got to keep that in check. Because if you're arrogant, the customer's going to be like, "Who's this idiot that I'm speaking to?"
Backfires.
Yeah, but you have to have this fearlessness.
Confidence.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you don't have the fearlessness and the confidence to believe in what you're selling and believe that you're going to solve their problem or you can help them out, if you go in there with no self-belief, that they're not going to believe it either if you don't believe it. So and then you also have to have, you know, a certain amount of self-doubt to keep you hungry, because if you don't have this self-doubt, you'll just become, you know, nonchalant. It'll be yeah. So it's this balancing act of your own psychology to understand where you're at and where they're at. And I just love that play.
Well, what was some of the epiphanies that you learned along the way, since it was completely orthogonal to your upbringing and your previous experience?
Yeah, that's a tricky question.
I mean, why do you use the word game? Is that from a sports background, video games?
No, it's sports. I love sports. I'm crazy on football, soccer, as you'd say in the US. Love different. Golf. It feels like a dirty word when I say soccer. So
that's a kid's game.
Sure. But yeah, I love sport. I love to compete. And I think obviously these are personality traits that you look for when you're hiring salespeople. You know, you want that competitiveness. You want that almost I know best attitude. But with experience and with age, you know, you see some things. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give somebody else who's starting off in sales is to know yourself. Go and speak to a psychologist or a therapist and know what's going on with yourself and understand what's going on with yourself before you start sort of performing to others.
Well, you don't meet many great salespeople that don't have some kind of competitive, because you have to have some kind of emotional attachment to both the process and the outcome, but with the right balance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you haven't got that competitive edge, I mean, it's a hamster wheel, isn't it? You've got quarter after quarter. It's a never-ending story.
It's hard.
So if you haven't got a fire within you, you're gonna, you're gonna make a couple of targets and then it's gonna burn out, and you're never gonna keep doing it. So I think you have to have goals. I think something that I self-motivate myself with is I always have a couple of personal goals, and I always have a couple of professional goals. So you have one short term, both in your private life and professional life, and one more long term that is a bit more ambitious, can one say. And without those goals, you're never gonna keep this fire burning. So you need to have these goals to be reaching for. So yeah, that's one of my secrets, but it is very materialistic. I mean, it's a capitalist trade that we're in, and it does help to be materialistic, because it's a means to an end. If you have a materialistic goal that you want to reach, you're going to help the company reach their materialistic goals to get the reward. So it's
right, because there's a couple of motives that I found with salespeople versus people who don't succeed in sales. If they're, how do I do the least to keep my job? Yeah. That person never succeeds in sales. In sales, it's like, how do I get the most and whatever it takes?
Yeah. It was something that I say to my wife as well, because in Sweden we have like 3 or 4 weeks where it closes down in summer and everybody's off. But obviously there's still, when I'm on these 3 or 4 weeks holiday, there's still deals going on in the background. So I'll be getting earache when I'm, on my phone answering emails. And my answer is sales never sleeps. You're always on. You're always on. And if you don't answer that email, that could be the difference between the deal landing or not. And I'm only going to punish myself if that deal doesn't land.
Right. I mean, because yes, the company gives you that vacation, but the customer doesn't, the market doesn't. And
Yeah.
whether you work a little bit or not, eh, yeah, you get a vacation, but you don't get the income.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's your
exactly.
choice.
Something that you spoke about working smart. I really like that. And I think that's something, especially people starting out in sales, need to really get into. And that's, the lead identification. So when you've got a bunch of leads coming in, you really need to look at, okay, what's going to pay? What are the big ones, the big cherry on top deals, and what are the stuff that's very unlikely, and prioritize it in that order. And that's always been my mantra, whenever I've worked in sales, is work that way. And I mean, the thought that when you say working smart, people think you're not working as hard, but I mean, it's just it makes it manageable to get through the amount of work that you have. So if I didn't work smart, I would no way get near through my workload. It just wouldn't happen. So the only way to get through the workload is to prioritize and set, okay, this is going to help me reach my targets. This, I need this deal. And then this one, unlikely to come in, but I'll do that last.
Right. And that's it. And people kind of misinterpret as like, oh, you're only going to work on the deals that will close. No, you just work on things in the likelihood that they will close and the time frame that they will close.
Yeah.
And that requires thinking and reflection and judgment. And it's not easy. It sounds easy, but you get a lead from this huge company, dream account, but it's a low-level person. They just got there. That might be a 16, 24-month deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people will go chase that for a year. It's like, I'll get to it when I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, something I find interesting. I work with extremely long sales lead times now. And something I find interesting but almost counterintuitive is because we're so quarterly based that we have this, we've got to meet these targets, and it's understandable,
It's a business.
a company that's, it's a business, it's on the stock market, we've got to meet we've got to help the shareholders get their kickbacks. But at the same time, it's a little bit counterintuitive to those long lead time deals, because you develop a culture where it's short, snap, fast cash. And we know to break these big accounts, you have to do the donkey work to be able to reap the rewards. And I can see, like, especially in a company that has like a quick turnover of people. So if you have salespeople that are in for a year and then leave, they're never going to be able to develop these relationships that lead to the big payday, because they're not there long enough to take the journey with a huge optimization or a change of direction. They're not going to be there to see it and be able to advise it. So the company almost suffers in the end because of the high turnover. So yeah, it's a balancing act of finding the right people and making them feel like they're safe, they belong, and they matter. And that's actually a mantra of my company. It's great. I mean, it's the best company I've ever worked for, and it's I feel really good there. Especially coming from the catastrophe. Sorry, going into the Swedish there, that I had in the previous job, where I completely lost it, and it wasn't through the lack of effort. I was trying, but it just was never going to work.
Yeah. And what is your strongest attribute as a salesperson?
Probably listening. I like
Yeah.
to listen to what the customer wants and then try and find a solution. I'm not shy in actually suggesting something else. So if we're on a call, customers got an idea of what they want to do. And like I said earlier, I like to be involved in the technical part. So I'm fairly technical. And then they've got an idea of what they want to do. And then all of a sudden I'm feeling, no, I've got a suggestion that we can make this better. It's probably cheaper as well. So I'm not scared of coming forward with the idea of changing something. And I think that's what gives you that step. So you're not just a salesperson anymore. You're now like a trusted advisor. You're
Right.
coming in with info and experience that you've seen from other customers, so they don't have to, test this and think, is this going to work? You can say, another customer did that, it didn't work, but another customer did this and it worked fantastically. So you save the IT department, 6 months of doing a POC. And then all of a sudden it's like you're in, you've made that relationship. And then it's just everything that happens from that point is, I'll call Simon and we'll speak about that. So
Well,
it's
yeah, because I think a lot of reps kind of, oh, if the customer wants this, they send them a quote instead of like, well, what are you going to do with it? Why did
yeah,
you pick that? And we think that and I think this is a misnomer, that customers come to us fully develop their vision of what they wanted. No, they come up with something out of a magazine or an idea in their head. They want the outcome and they want the cheapest possible way to get there, but they don't understand the implications of all of these things.
yeah. Something I find hilarious within the IT industry is when you go to these events and you've got like a bank or a financial institution or an insurance company or something presenting what they're doing. And, they present it really confidently. We're doing this, we're doing that. And then at the end of the presentation, and it's like, but it is right though, isn't it? This is what you guys are doing, right? So
Of
I love that
course.
insecurity. It's
Well,
funny.
yeah, well, that's it, because how deep can they go into certain things?
Yeah.
And think about when you buy, I don't know if you bought a car or a house or a TV recently, but you have an idea.
Yeah.
Unless you really, really, watch YouTube and research it, that sales rep knows a lot about the issues.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something, due diligence is critical.
Yeah.
But that comes back to working smart, because you can't do due diligence for every customer you're going to meet. You can't go deep. Um, Something that I've recently started doing that I didn't used to do before was, once you're actually in with a customer and they've got, it's multifaceted, it's got lots of divisions, but once you actually get in, you get a foot in the door, say you're in with the IT systems, then you've got all of these divisions that have their own IT departments. And once you've got one of them in, then you can just go on all out attack and hit all of the divisions and say, listen, guys, I got your number from this person. You're already a customer, so all the legals are done. I can help you with this, this, and this. What are your problems you're facing? What are your headaches? What technology are you using? What do you want to connect to? And it's golden. It's the key to growing the account is just spreading the wings. And I think that's a little bit of naivety on my behalf, that you think everyone within a company is connected and they all talk to each other, and nobody talks to each other. You've got to, some people are sitting across the hall from each other and they don't know what that department's doing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Back when you could be on site, I remember, walking through, I always tried to get a badge as soon as I could, because then you own the account, because you can walk around like you work there.
Yeah.
And nobody knew what each other was doing, which is both good and bad.
Yeah.
Well, what skill do you wish you were infinitely better at?
Patience.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with patience. But at the same time, I know you can't push a customer. But that's both work and private life. Patience is probably one of my biggest weaknesses. But at the same time, I know the game. You can't push a customer. You can't hassle a customer. You can't be too interested in a deal, because then you're just going to make the other side of the game harder for yourself in the future, because they're going to know you need this deal, and they're going to want more money off, and it's going to be, you know, it's going to be sweaty. So patience is something that I really work on and try to improve.
But how do you catch yourself from ruining it? Because I think the pushiness alienates clients faster than anything, because there's no value to them. They may be moving as fast as they can. Yeah.
I think something that you almost have to manage management in those situations, because I'm pretty relaxed. I'm not going to chase a deal. I've done my part. I'm confident in what I've done. So I feel like I don't need to chase that. You know, they'll come back to me when they're ready. Yeah. So I'm not a fan of chasing. And I think if something doesn't feel right, if you're told something from above and it doesn't feel right and it doesn't sit with your principles, don't be scared to say no. I mean, you shouldn't let anyone treat you like you want to be treated or you treat them. So I think if any pressure point is put on you, you can kick back, and there's no problem with that. It's, you know, as long as you've got a decent argument and you can say, you know, I don't want to do this because, you should always stand up for yourself. And I completely believe in that.
And I think that we fall into that forecasting trap a lot, because managers want us to talk it up at the beginning of the quarter, and then the reality sets in and they make you look bad because you're not living up to what they talked you up to.
Yeah, I mean, forecasting is an impossible job, because
and I think managers put too much onus on the rep. The manager should be able to tell where the deal is by asking the questions and helping see if there is a way to get it to go faster. And I think reps naturally are optimistic. Pessimistic people really don't go into sales, right?
No. But I think one of the hard parts is even if you're deep into an account, maybe they're already a customer, you know, there could be changes within the company that makes, you know, the deal is going to happen, but the timelines change, and there's nothing you or I can do about that.
Yeah. And putting pressure on the rep just distracts them and annoys them. It doesn't empower them. Yeah,
but that goes into the coaching and the PT part, doesn't it?
Sure does.
I love to be coached. I know I'm not the finished article. There's loads of stuff I can be better at. But pointing out things, you know, that's not coaching. That's just annoying, like you said. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think you have to develop a thick skin within sales as well. You know, it has to be like water off the duck's back.
Yeah.
Because if you take everything personally, you're not gonna survive.
You're not gonna survive. And how do you have that thick skin? Is that from soccer?
No, it's from just experience, I would say. I would hate to manage me. I'm a real pain in the backside. Because
you sound pretty interdependent.
Yeah, but I will push back. I do push back on things.
You have an opinion?
Yeah. And it's interesting with the flow of deals as well. And when you're confident about a deal coming in, you know basically that you're going to make the year target. But we come back to exactly predicting when a deal will come in is an extremely difficult talent.
Yeah.
But you can't ignore gut feeling. Gut feeling is something that I truly believe in. You know, from the conversations, the feeling, the meetings, you know if a deal's going to happen or not.
Well, It's also selling inside, because everyone loves a surprise and hates a disappointment.
Yeah.
So give yourself enough time to make it a surprise and not a disappointment.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. That's a tricky one. It's almost like you keep deals a little bit quiet until they start bubbling before you put them
Or
in.
you need help.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the downside of it. Is like, if you need help, they go, well, that's not this quarter. Well, it
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But yeah, definitely though, thinking about the psychology of the meetings is my biggest interest, I would say. And something I did recently in a meeting is it's making these connections to people within the call. Obviously, it's more difficult when you're doing it over Zoom or Teams, but just the small things, the humanisms, the completely go away from the deal or whatever you're talking about. But for example, I was speaking to a guy in Madrid a couple of weeks ago, and I know they're crazy about their football in Madrid. So literally, I just said, "Okay, Atletico or Real," and he was like, "Oh, Real," and I'm a huge Liverpool supporter. So then this whole side conversation started in over email, talking about Champions League and da 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 da, and this has completely changed our work relationship. So everything is much easier. It flows. It's fast. You build just that small humanism of recognizing a common interest builds a level of trust. And without that level of trust, because I mean, that's what we are as humans. We
Some of us.
meet a stranger. You meet a stranger and you're like, ooh, don't know if I trust this person.
Well, you naturally don't. But has that hurt you in Sweden, being Welsh?
No, I think I've almost had a free ticket sometimes because I've got, I'm not the average. I speak in my hacky Swedish with my accent, and it's just a little bit interesting. So I think I've had a bit
curiosity.
of yeah, I've had a bit of a ticket, and people ask me things that they probably wouldn't ask another salesperson. So it's like, oh, how did you come to Sweden? Is your wife Swedish, or what brought you here? Just those kind of questions, and it's all about giving a part of yourself, and as you said, performing. So you share something, and then you go on a tangent and you talk about something else, and it develops a relationship, which I think is so important. And that actually is a point that I wanted to hit on, and it's a danger in sales, is because we're such social animals, and we have to express ourselves, we have to perform, and we have to be on our A game. And then when you come home, there's a Foo Fighters song, the Best of You, and that's something that really rings a bell with my wife. And she said it, they get the best of you all of the time, and then you come home when you're tired and you're not that social creature that you can be, because they're getting the best of you.
Yeah. that you can tell, and to be the best of you but not sound like a salesperson.
Yeah.
Because you can always tell at a trade show where the salesperson sees a prospect or a client and they light up, and it's like a switch, and then the customer walks away and they slouch back and they're like not interested in talking.
And I think that's a dangerous sort of play to make. I think you need to be yourself as much as possible, but even though you're your best self, so you bring out your best stories, you bring out, you're obviously
energy,
in a good mood, energy, exactly, but you shouldn't be somebody else.
Right.
You can't be somebody else, because then that's fake, and then that will get found out a few meetings down the road. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Simon, appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I'm on LinkedIn. So Simon Jones on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. Feel free.